So Jesse, if you're ready, we can record.
All set.
Okay, so like I said, we will record this event. I wanted to welcome everyone and thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us to learn more about Microsoft's Azure Hardware Systems and Infrastructure team. They have some great opportunities. They've also put together a team of great panelists and speakers so that you can learn more about not only Microsoft, but the teams that have opportunities for you. So welcome everyone. Very excited about this event. It's our first time working with the hardware group. We do lots of events with the software side of the house, but this is our first event focusing on opportunities in hardware. So welcome. Like I said, we'll record the event. So if you need to walk away or take a break, a bathroom break, or get coffee, don't worry. I will share the recording after the event. But thanks everyone for being here. Looks like we've got a great turnout. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, let me go over the agenda for this evening so that you all know what to expect. Then I'll introduce myself and this particular opportunity for you and what it means and how to take advantage of it. But first of all, I'll give my welcome so that you guys know who I am, so that you know who HBCU Connect is, so you know a little bit about the history of our partnership with Microsoft. Then I will introduce the keynote speakers for this evening's event. One by one, you'll hear from each keynote speaker. They will give an introduction to themselves and an overview of the organizations that they represent. Then I will introduce the team of panelists that have a variety of functions and roles within the teams that are hiring at Microsoft. I'll introduce them one by one, so you'll have the chance to get to know them better so that you can generate questions that you might like to ask to those specific team members utilizing the chat. And then also you'll learn a little bit about their path to Microsoft, what they do at Microsoft, and the teams that they represent. After I introduce each of the panelists, then we will go into a panel discussion where I have prepared some questions on behalf of US candidates to ask to the Microsoft team members so that you can get to know not only Microsoft a little bit better, but also the teams that are represented and the company culture that is represented. So we'll have a panel discussion. And towards the end of the panel discussion, I'd like to encourage you all to utilize the chat feature here in Microsoft Teams so that you can ask questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to read off your questions from the chat to the team members on the panel so that we can get some live Q&A for the benefit of everyone on the call. Then we will end the event with next steps so that you'll understand if you'd like to land an interview and potentially start a career with Microsoft, you will know what action to take. All right, so that's going to be our agenda for the evening. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. A lot of you guys already know me. I sent out a lot of the communications to invite you to this particular event, along with my team that did a lot of outreach to invite you in for this special VIP event. So for you to have the opportunity to learn more about Microsoft, to ask questions, I encourage you to utilize the chat feature, not only to introduce yourself, but also to ask questions of the team members and the recruiters that are on the call. But a little bit about myself, I'm an HBCU graduate. I went to Hampton University in Virginia. I started HBCU Connect as a passion project. And years after starting, we organically got into the recruitment space after launching sort of a social network similar to a LinkedIn for HBCU students and graduates. And the good folks at Microsoft forged a relationship with us. And a couple of years into that relationship, they asked us to sort of get outside of the box of our online services and look at doing events to bring the talent from our community to the table to meet the hiring managers and recruiters and team members at Microsoft. So we started hosting physical events all over the country. We're going, consistently having events with Microsoft every year until COVID hit. And kudos to Microsoft, instead of canceling their event lineup, they actually decided to pivot from doing those events physically to doing these events now virtually to make sure that they are sharing their opportunities with you and continuing to hire folks from this event. So what is the opportunity for you at this event? This is not just a show and tell. This is not just learn about Microsoft as a branding event. This is a hiring event. So the results of this event should be some of you landing interviews and some of you being hired for the opportunities that are available. So please make sure to listen up, pay attention to the speakers, ask some good questions in the chat, and engage. and make the most of this opportunity, because this is a real opportunity for you to potentially land a job with Microsoft. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce our first keynote speaker. So it is my pleasure to introduce the CVP and top executive for Azure Hardware Silicon Engineering Solutions organization, Jean Befarhat. John is responsible for leading engineering teams that deliver silicon and semiconductor related technology, IP, and SoCs for Microsoft's hardware systems, platforms, and devices, including brands you are likely very familiar with, including Xbox and HoloLens. As a semiconductor veteran, Jean brings decades of experience to his current executive role from companies like AMD and Synaptics. He joined Microsoft last year, and he's here to tell you more about the organization, the people, his experience, and how he runs this diverse and multi-site team. Jean, if you're ready.
Thank you, Will, and thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. I appreciate that. Thank you all for joining. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you. Appreciate making the time to be part of this event for us. Let me start by maybe telling you a little bit about myself. Will introduce me as originally from Liba, Lebanon. What you probably don't know is Liba is like a 2,500 person little town in Lebanon. I grew up during the Civil War, where people fought for religious reasons or background where they come from. After I graduated from high school, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina to pursue my education. And as many, over 1 million people that have left Lebanon because of the Civil War, I was one of those individuals. I started in my first experience out of Lebanon was in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I attended the University of North Carolina at Charlotte and completed my undergraduate and master's degree in electrical engineering. Two things that happened, one thing that happened in the school year during my school is, because of the Civil War, money was not coming as often as I would have liked it. So I ended up having to work for ends meet, and I started working in a country club. Probably if you're from Charlotte area, you probably know in the South Charlotte, there's a nice country club where I started working under the supervision of a very nice Superman, and his name was James. I had no experience working at all before, or serving tables or dining, rooms or any of that stuff. But I've learned a lot from him. He was a very funny man, very approachable, hardworking, and also learned how to be respectful and learn how to say yes, sir, yes, ma'am. How may I help you? And they became second nature to me, and till today, it's one of the things I've learned and I still use. Shortly after graduation, I moved to Colorado and started my first job at NCR. And NCR, for those of you on the East Coast, got acquired by AT&T, and then my division got sold to Hyundai in Korea. So you can imagine the diversity of things just in the first few years that I was at NCR. But the most important things that happened in that time frame is in the first 5 years, I became ambitious and decided that management is my career direction, and I applied for a position with no previous experience being a manager and no experience in the function that I was supposed to lead. But I interviewed with the hiring manager. His name was Herman, and he saw, despite my lack of experience and the super ambition, he saw the potential in me, and I got the position, and that set the course of the rest of my career into the management ladder, and I haven't changed since. The lesson that I would like to share with you from those two experiences is, despite me being self-motivated, believing in yourself, driving your own destiny, making your own choices in the future, you need people to help you along the way. So having advocates and people that give you opportunity or help or nudge in a certain way is very important. So I to this day, it's one of the things I do is I've become a better advocate, better promoter, better support for those that have been around me. After, I spent the rest of my career in the semiconductor space. I'm not sure how many of you are in the semiconductor space at this point. 30 plus years working, as Will stated already, at many companies, starting with NCR and finishing at Synaptics, with some big companies in the middle, AMD and Altera. And I was doing well, enjoyed everything I've done. I loved working on difficult problems. In the semiconductor, every generation is a completely new problem set. We always wanted things better, faster, cheaper, smaller, fits into a watch, into a mobile phone, into a laptop, or a data center. So the problem space is huge. The solutions that have to come together is very diverse. You need people from all walk of life, different skills, different knowledge bases and backgrounds. And I've learned that innovation only comes from bringing a lot of perspective, different experiences, different domains into the mix. And it doesn't come from just polishing the same thing. You can continuously improve, but really true innovation comes from really working at a large scale, bringing in multiple perspectives into solving problems. And there's an abundance of those problems in the semiconductor space, and every generation gets harder. And the teams, when I started working, we had one design, one engineer, and now we have close to 500 engineers working on the same design. And that's only in the hardware side and the silicon side. And then you get the hardware system and the software and the systems, the data centers, and then your manufacturing and everything along the way. And then you have thousands of people now trying to make this little chip come together. So it's always fascinating to me. Now you say, okay, John, you spent all your life in semiconductor. Why Microsoft? Microsoft is a software company. It's actually became very clear to me as soon as I started got a call from a recruiter to join Microsoft or to consider Microsoft. The three things that clicked in my mind. One is, I've always tracked Microsoft. We've worked with AMD. We've delivered products to Microsoft. I worked on the Xbox when I was at AMD as well. So I knew Microsoft for the last 30, 40 years. But the thing that have changed in Microsoft is, Satya came in a few years ago and created this, energy around, transforming Microsoft, which is amazing for a company that's just 4 years old that can transform itself so many times. But in the last phase, it became $1 trillion company. It has a global reach. It's investing in hardware. And for somebody that, with my experience, it's where can you apply everything you've learned in your career in a culture that is diverse and inclusive and with a growth mindset and have a global level of impact? And you realize, okay, you're solving, complex problems that are there to solve problems for the world at the global level. And the best way to do it is to be part of a company like Microsoft and to work with people that are as diverse as the market that we service or the customer base that we service across the globe. And that's why I joined Microsoft, and it's been a great ride. I joined during COVID, so I have not met many of the people on my team or at Microsoft. But you know that you are part of the team. I feel like I've been here 10 years plus, because it's a very welcoming environment, very inclusive. And the problems we solve requires multi-dimensions. We can optimize now at the scale that nobody else, not a semiconductor company, not a software company. But when you bring the hardware and software together and the services and the application the customers care about, you bring it all together, you're trying to optimize across a huge space. And that's what they're going to give you the benefit, to solve the problems that Microsoft is trying to address and to provide the services that everybody around the globe cares about. So that's why, I always get excited when I talk about this. So I apologize if I'm a little overexcited. So we're here to make an impact. And that's the big lesson I learned. And the second lesson in my career is that innovation comes from being open-minded, growth-oriented, bringing the collective knowledge of the whole community. And the community has to work flawlessly together. These problems are difficult, so you can't have a dysfunctional community. You have to have highly functional, highly collaborative community. And then to make an impact, you need the venue and you need the space that allows you to provide that impact at the large scale. And that's, where it makes sense. So you think about it, somebody that have grown up in a little town, nobody knows what it, until I said what the name was, nobody knew what it is. Not that probably most people don't know where Lebanon is either. But just think about it. Then from a small, for a person like me to come in from a small town and to be able to make a difference and be part of a world-changing community is phenomenal. And it's the proudest thing I've done, and also one of the most exciting things I have. Let me switch a little bit of gear about the hardware group, and why this is important for Microsoft. Microsoft builds, we have, as Will described, we have a HoloLens and Xboxes, and these are great consumer and enterprise products. But the bigger, element of what we do is the cloud services, and Azure is the world computer. We like Azure to be the world computer, and to build that world computer, you need hardware. To build hardware, you need silicon, and silicon is a foundational capability. Is a critical strategic technology that Microsoft is investing in, and for that you need to understand the whole system. And you have to solve the problems at the silicon level that are optimized for the whole system. So that's why you have the groups that are represented here, the silicon engineering and solutions team, and also the Azure hardware architecture team are the ones that are building these systems from the grounds up. Right. So this is, you're going to be talking to Selim, and I think you're talking to Doug, which represent that organization. The positions that we have is pretty broad set of positions. So we have positions in architecture and design, verification, manufacturing engineering, product engineering, business development, program management, project management, experiences at all levels, from individual contributors to managers and director positions. You're going to be working on projects that are exciting. We already mentioned it a few times: Xbox, HoloLens, and Azure hardware systems and infrastructure. Those are brands that most of the world knows in the consumer space, enterprise space, even governments and entities. And the reach is across the globe. We sell products across the globe in all countries, all regions of the world. And our design teams are actually located in multiple, we have multiple sites, which hopefully should be attractive to most of you. We have in Portland, Raleigh, Atlanta, Silicon Valley, in Mountain View, Seattle, Austin, and stay tuned. We'll have more sites opening up. So I'd like to leave you with a few comments just to make sure that you get the message. I can't think of any better company to make an impact at the global level than Microsoft. We are in the hardware side, in the hardware organization. You're joining a community that is growing, that is unified in our mission, that works closely together to produce the best products we can think of. And you're going to have the brightest minds, brightest perspectives, diverse community from all walks of life and backgrounds and experiences coming together. And I can't think of a better place or a more important thing to do. And I hope you will be able to join us in our journey and come to Microsoft and make an impact. And thank you, and I'll return it back to you, Will.
So before I let you go, can I ask one question?
Yes.
So since you joined Microsoft, what is it that you like most so far about working for the company?
I love the people. I mean, I can't say it enough. Any which way you turn, you think, everybody's known you for years. Everybody's willing to help. I can tell you my first month on the job, it was during the worst part of COVID, from April, May of last year. Just think about how bad things were.
Yeah.
I had people on the call, walking me through presentations, giving me culture. I had two buddies, one on the technology and one on the culture. I have roundtables, people reaching out. John, how do we talk to? I've talked to more executives than I've ever talked to. I've had several meetings with Satya, in my first 6 months than previous years with CEOs of much smaller companies.
Wow.
You see it; it's infectious. Everybody is here to make a difference, and everybody works collaboratively. And it's and so for somebody that coming in a hardware and a software company, and also during COVID, but we don't know what's going to work, what's not, and we have a large organization. Just imagine, how can you function when we have not met the people? And right. I can tell you, we've been very highly functional for the last 14 months.
Excellent.
It's the people.
Excellent. So I want to thank you for taking the time out to not only present yourself and your background and your experiences, but also sharing a little bit more about the organization. I know you're a super busy man along with everyone else that's on the call as well. So just wanted to say thank you. And with that, I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker. So thanks, John.
Thanks, Will. I'll stick around for a little bit.
Yes, sir. So if anyone has any questions for John as a leader within the Silicon Engineering Solutions team, feel free to drop those questions in the chat. And in the meantime, we'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker. So our next speaker is Selim Bilan, Partner Director of Engineering in the SES organization. So Selim, if you're ready.
All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
Yes, sir.
I'm Selim, and I'd like to start with thanking you all for taking the time to attend this session. I'm one of the partner directors of engineering within the Silicon Engineering and Solutions group led by Jean, who was speaking just before me. I'm currently located in Portland, Oregon. But I was born to two chemical engineers and raised in a West Coast town in Turkey named Izmir. So I'm originally from Turkey. I have, just like Jean, joined Microsoft just a little over a year ago, maybe a little bit earlier than Jean did. It was in early April of 2020. And my responsibilities in Microsoft include building a brand new hardware design center in Portland, as well as delivering to the hardware design projects that fuel the world's computer, which we call Azure. And yes, I joined during the pandemic, and I am yet to step into a Microsoft building since I started, with the exception of the one that I'm leading the building of in Portland or in Beaverton, which currently requires hard hats to get into, so it's not quite a fully functional building yet. Before Microsoft, I spent close to 24 years at Intel Corporation. And my responsibilities at Intel and my job functions ranged from individual contributions, the call to fame for me on that one was I was a core team member delivering the QuickPath interconnect technology to the market. It was a long time back, but it still is there. From individual contributions to design team management, I actually became a manager within the first 2 years of my employment at Intel. The scope of management actually grew over time. I'm also proud of the achievements in that aspect where I happened to lead a program that leads the list on the most grossing or most revenue producing program for the company at $57 billion over its lifetime of 5 years. Towards the end, I was the vice president of engineering responsible for the post-silicon validation of all Intel projects and programs. And I was leading or in charge of leading a team of 2,300 very capable engineers. Then I made the decision to move on to Microsoft. And just like Jean said, it was a very appealing situation because we are writing history at Microsoft, and that's what essentially is appealing to me. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But before I go there, I'd like to, this is why we're all here, I'd like to talk a little bit about our organization in Microsoft or in SES. You heard Jean talk about the SES organization, so I'm going to just double click on it and descend into my organization. While my organization is set and centered around in Portland, we are a brand new organization and we are ambitiously growing to make a difference in the bottom line for Azure and Microsoft hardware solutions. And as a result, we are essentially open to hiring in any geography where the SES group presence already exists. And these are geographies like, Portland is obviously there, and Redmond is where the headquarters is, so it's obviously there. There's California, there's Raleigh, and Austin. The team's charter right now is to deliver innovative and differentiating products for the Azure business, which I earlier called as the world's computer, which is the mission for the Azure business. And we are responsible for the development cycle, starting with architecture through post-silicon validation of every single component and everything in between. Everything in between architecture and post-silicon validation basically includes microarchitecture, RTL and logic design, pre-silicon verification, structural design, and full chip assembly, and then you go to post-silicon functions. As I indicated earlier, we're currently going through a hiring ramp and looking for talented engineers across the experience spectrum. So we're not necessarily looking for a specific experience in the candidates. It's across the spectrum for not only the previously mentioned areas, ranging from architecture to post-silicon validation, but also in areas like manufacturing, such as product engineering, test engineering, and packaging. I see a lot of questions popping up on the screen as well. I'll try to answer some of them at the same time too. While what we're working on today or what we will be working on tomorrow is rather confidential and I can't share much details around it, I can safely state that we're working on cutting-edge products with longevity through an exciting roadmap that blends innovation unique to Microsoft in the silicon, platform, and data centers to produce compelling outcome for our customers. Well, we kind of have to do this because the cloud service provider business is becoming a tough competitive business, and the competition landscape, with the lack of a better term, is not going to take any prisoners. Once you fall behind, and it's going to be very tough to catch up. So we're utilizing all our innovative muscles to get in there and start writing history for Microsoft. I find both SES, our parent organization, and Microsoft to be a great place to work for various different reasons. First of all, the opportunity that we have here, in my opinion, is unique and second to none. Such an opportunity does not come across in anyone's career twice. You get it once if you're lucky. And I'm quite grateful that we are essentially going through this experience because I consider myself lucky in this context as a result. Because we are literally in the process of writing history at Microsoft through SES by doing something that was not done at Microsoft before. Okay? So Microsoft definitely has done Xbox and HoloLens before, and as I said, while I can't give a lot of details on what we're working on, this is something that's unique and a little bit different. This allows you, in contrast to all my prior experiences in my employment with Intel and other places, this allows you to set things right off from the start. You can argue, yeah, we're trying to build the plane as we're flying. Yes, there is some excitement and challenge associated with that as well. But the experience is literally second to none. And similarly, again, with SES and Microsoft, the environment is extremely constructive and inclusive. The SES group is also reflecting the Microsoft corporate values and principles, which are aligned with mine, where people come first and they are always heard. And if you, in my opinion, if you invest in people, if you do it the right way, then success will follow. As far as diversity is concerned, obviously we are strong supporters as Microsoft of diversity because we're aware of many people on the planet who genuinely would like to achieve more, but due to different sets of circumstances, abilities, and backgrounds, they're somewhat locked out of participating in everything that's happening around them. And the diversity of opinions and the diversity of thinking obviously enriches the environment, but only when coupled with inclusion, so that all opinions are out in the open, heard and considered, which is one of the fundamental values that Microsoft is defining its business around. Personally, I was raised in a geography where there was only one race, one religion, one language. There was no diversity at all. And naturally, the importance of diversity and inclusion in that matter did not occur to me until I started my professional life in the US. That is when I actually came to the realization that the diversity of opinion is actually the thing that introduces the ability to think differently and break your blinders and see the problems that you're dealing with on a daily basis, see the issues that you're dealing with on a daily basis from many different angles. And it was crystal clear to me as soon as I became a manager, and I observed this not because I was trying to drive for diversity or inclusion. I was just a new manager trying to figure out which way is left, which way is right. But it became very obvious that, and I was blessed at the time that my team was already a diverse team. Solutions, approaches that I could not even have thought about, even if I had an infinite amount of time, was coming in a very valuable manner from folks who were coming from different backgrounds with that diversity of opinion. And that is priceless. And that is why, since that revelation, I have taken it as my mission to build all my teams as diverse as possible, with the same investing in people mindset that allows all opinions to be heard. And there are two gentlemen who will be speaking after me who have been with me in those or through those experiences as I was building my teams, who can also attest to that. So that's essentially my life story. If you have any questions, let me know.
Yeah, so I would like to follow up with one question. Considering your lengthy and accomplished career at Intel, what was it that made you decide, or what were the factors that made you decide to jump over to Microsoft?
Part of it is exactly what we talked about, and I will give you an example here. Intel was going through a tough time. Obviously the opportunity at Microsoft was second to none. So don't underestimate that. Okay. But what actually allowed me to reach my escape velocity is Intel was going through a tough time. And as with the post that I was holding as the post-silicon validation VP, I knew what was wrong. And I knew how to address it. I went and made several pitches, presentations, discussions with not only the what we used to call MCM, then it became ELT, Extended Leadership Team, and the board itself. But unfortunately, I was not able to make forward progress on those items, and I realized that I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place and not able to go anywhere. And then when I juxtapose this situation to what Microsoft is doing, first of all, Microsoft apparently, and Doug can attest to that, he has been at Microsoft for a long time, Microsoft has gone through a similar situation. And with Satya's valuable leadership, Microsoft has gracefully recovered from it. Okay, so there is this mindset of listening to everybody and making sure that all opinions are heard. Not that I would have made a major difference if I was at the Microsoft situation at that time, because not every single opinion will be taken as granted, right? But at least it would have been heard, not in one ear out the other.
Right.
And I'm sure Intel is going to get there eventually. They have been making some decent changes, and sadly, most of those changes happened after I left. But at the end of the day, the culture at Microsoft was the fundamental catalyst for me to be able to reach my escape velocity. But the fundamental driver, make no mistake,
yes,
is the opportunity to write history, the opportunity to do something that was not done before. Otherwise, to be fair, I did have a cushy job, so why would I leave it? But I don't think I would have been able to live with myself down the road with that.
Excellent. So Selim, let me thank you for taking the time out to be one of our keynotes. I appreciate it. So any of our candidates have questions specifically for Selim, please drop those questions in the chat. But with that, let me introduce our next keynotes, then I'll stop the spotlight on Selim and put it on Doug. So Doug, let me introduce you next. So Doug Berger is a technical fellow of the Cloud Accelerated Systems and Technologies Group, acronym CAST. So Doug, if you're ready, I understand you're dialed in from an interesting place.
Well, so let's see how this goes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So for everybody, I apologize for the bad connection. I'm actually in the Bahamas on an island where the internet and power goes in and out. So I may drop off at any moment, but it's not because I love you all. It's because my thin tether to civilization has been cut. So why don't you just run ahead and we'll see how this goes.
Let's do it. So if you'd like to share a little bit about your experience and how you ended up working at Microsoft and what you currently do at Microsoft.
Sure. I'm a technical fellow, which is a technical leadership position equivalent to a corporate vice president. Right now, I am responsible for architecting and driving forward our AI platform and infrastructure. I work very closely with SES, with John's team, on a number of projects. So we're in tight partnership. I'm originally from a small town in Massachusetts. My parents were professors at Smith College, which is an all-women's college. So I would say similar to the HBCUs, it plays a very special role in education. It's produced a phenomenal number of very, very famous and accomplished women. And when I was young, I was lucky enough to be able to take a few classes there. And I was one of two men in a class of 80 women who were all brilliant and accomplished and made me feel very inadequate. And so I learned a lot about the importance of just treating everyone with empathy and respect and what it feels like to be, feel very insecure about your position in a very accomplished group of people. I went through graduate school. I got my PhD at the University of Wisconsin. I taught at the University of Texas as a professor of computer science for 10 years, specializing in computer architecture, chips and the software interface to those. And what I learned from that experience was just the real importance of mentoring people. I saw so many students who were brilliant, had so much potential, but they needed somebody to support them and believe in them and help them and take them and help them realize that potential. And I mentored a large number of people. And I'm very proud of the people that I mentored successfully and that went on to achieve really impressive things. After that, I moved to Microsoft. I wanted to jump into the belly of the beast and drive research more directly. And so I moved to Microsoft Research and spent 10 years there trying to invent crazy new technologies and have them influence the company's roadmap. Some of the hardware my team invented in my MSR role ended up shipping in millions of servers. I don't have time to go into all that now. And then in 2018, Satya decided he wanted a more focused hardware group. And so he asked me and the majority of my team to move in and drive these innovations more directly in Azure. And so I took on the technical fellow role. We've been working to drive more and more rapid hardware and hardware software innovations into Azure. And right now I'm focusing on the artificial intelligence area, which, as many of you probably know, is white hot. I can tell you that this area is going to change civilization. I mean, I'm not a guy who believes in hype very often, but I've seen what it's able to do and where it's going. It's one of the most important technologies of the past 200 years. And so I feel very privileged to be able to work with John and many other people across Microsoft at trying to move this technology forward and really help it to empower people, up-level people's capabilities and use it for good. It's a very important mission to me. For my team, we hire both for CAST, we hire both hardware and software people. If you want to come and work and about the most advanced AI systems that you can imagine that are really just driving the cutting edge forward, that's what we do. I wanted to talk a little bit about culture. When you set out on these missions with purpose, it's super important that you have a strong culture. And both John and Selim talked about this and talked about the Microsoft culture. And my organization's cultures mirrors that. I have a huge focus on respect and empathy, a huge focus on allowing people to bring their authentic selves and do their best work, and a huge focus on teamwork in the sense that, we want people to be invested in each other's success. I want people who are intellectually hungry, want to learn, want to grow, and have all the people around them help them to learn and grow. So I try very hard not to hire jerks. That's a simple thing you can do. But the culture of our org, I think, really mirrors the Microsoft culture. And so we're on a mission to really transform society for the better with the most advanced technologies and AI you can imagine, and doing it with a culture where people are respected and supported and have fun.
So can I ask a quick sort of high-level question?
Absolutely.
About cloud accelerated systems and technologies, as opposed to silicon, engineering solutions, right? SES and CAST. How are they different, and then how do they work together, if in layman's terms, right? If I ask you on the street.
Well, I would say that SES, John's organization, designs and builds the chips and the silicon, and my team looks more end to end, starting from the algorithms, the data science, the software, and then parts of the hardware. And on the intersections of the hardware, figuring out what to build and what to build in chips and what to build in systems, John's team and mine work very closely together. So I have mathematicians on staff, I have hardware designers, I have software engineers. John's team is really focused on delivering world-class silicon, and I'm trying to make sure that we provide the right set of things going into the stack to allow both the silicon, the software, and the experiences to be successful.
One more question before I let you go as our last keynote, and that is, what is it for you personally that you like most about working for Microsoft?
Well, you're asking me a hard question because there's so many things. I mean, the intellectual excitement, the culture, the way Satya's revitalized the company and has really put it on a mission for good. I think for me, at this moment, it's the intellectual challenge of what we're trying to do, in designing, new algorithms, new mathematics, new hardware, new software, bring it all together in something that might actually really, really change humanity. You find yourself very rarely in a position like this, where you have the opportunity to shift the course of civilization. It's like being very early in the Industrial Revolution or the Enlightenment. So I feel very blessed to be in this company that has that whole end-to-end stack at this place in time when this thing is about to happen. And so for those of you that are excited about this, I can tell you there's just no more exciting mission than what's happening right now in AI. For me personally, at least.
Excellent. So let me give a shout out to the Bahamas. not only because your internet connection held up quite well for your keynote, but I've got some cousins floating around down there as well. But no, let me thank you, Doug. I think this speaks volumes to the level of commitment that Microsoft has to hiring diverse candidates. I mean, you're dialed in from vacation. I know lots of folks are busy, but they stay committed to events like this to share their experiences, and hopefully folks get excited about the opportunities at Microsoft. So let me thank you for that, Doug. And with that, we'll go into introducing our team of panelists. So thanks, Doug.
And I'm sorry, just to understand.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm listening.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the only work event I did this week. So that shows you how important this issue is to me personally. Everything else I put off, but this one I said I have to do.
Thank you, Doug. It is appreciated.
Yep. Thank you. Yep.
Okay. So with that, let's introduce our first panelist. So like I said, I'm going to introduce each of our panelists. And so first of all, if you have questions for Doug, drop those questions in the chat. And if you have any other, questions related to the technologies that are being used or questions about Microsoft, we have lots of panelists and a few recruiters on the call as well. So you can drop those questions in the chat, and let's make this opportunity for this event as interactive as possible. I'll ask the Microsoft folks that are not presenting to keep an eye on the chat if there are any questions that you can answer. And for our candidates and attendees, please drop those questions in the chat, especially after each one of our speakers present, if you have a specific question for that speaker. So let me go into the panelist introductions. So let me move here to the next slide. So our first panelist is Prashant Nimala, who's a front-end logic design leader within SES. So Prashant, if you're ready.
Yes, hello. Thanks, Will, for that introduction. And hello, everyone. A quick introduction about what I do, what my job description is. I report to Selim, who spoke earlier. And my job description is, as it says, front-end design engineer leader. My responsibility is to make sure that I actually take a microarchitecture spec provided to me or to my team, and then produce that. And the output is from my team is to produce a fully functional behavioral model that represents the microarchitecture. So in that one statement, there is a lot of work that goes behind it. But that's my job description, my scope, what I do at Microsoft. But before even I came to Microsoft, I was performing a similar role at Intel for 23 years. I performed various, I held various roles, including as an individual designer, like designing L1 caches in the core, to all the way going outside of the core and designing various fabrics, the PCI controllers, IO controllers, etc. So I have held different kinds of roles in the same scope as in a front-end designer, and I try to gain a lot more experience going from project to project that I held in Intel. I towards the late part of my career at Intel, where I was also performing a similar role as a leader for various client products, such as the Core I Star series products. but that was very exciting. I held that role for a lot of time in Intel, but then I felt that okay, we need to make a little bit of change because doing the same thing over and over again translates to some kind of saturation in your skills also. So I thought it is time for me to actually make a change in my own personal career. So I was looking around, and this opportunity came along for Microsoft, where it was trying to build something from scratch, which was very exciting for me. I always wanted to also do another round of build something from scratch kind of an experience, and I had to grab this opportunity and get on ship here. And right now, today, we are working towards what I came here for, which is building a very technologically challenging product for Azure custom needs. So I am very thrilled to be part of this, and we are growing. Like John and Selim have alluded to, we are growing, and I'm also looking for building a strong team with a diverse skill set within my organization as well to contribute towards building these various challenging products.
So quick question for you. So if I have a background in computer engineering or electrical engineering, and I have some experience, for example, what types of skills or experience are you looking for to help build out your team?
Yeah, so I think through your college, you would definitely get your skills through for electrical engineering skills, if you will. And maybe through your lab work or various projects that you may have performed in your coursework, you might have gained some exposure to various vendor EDA tools to use how to operate with them. Maybe some hardware description programming skills that you may have been exposed to. Those are the valuable important skills that we would be definitely be looking towards from the various candidates who are coming straight out of college. But on top of that, experience also matters, and if there are people who have already been in the industry for some time, definitely we will take advantage of that too, irrespective of your backgrounds. And it is very important that we try to build a healthy mix of experience and junior engineers so that we have a proper bench strength that we build towards for longevity. So we take all of these into account when trying to come up with the right mix of the team members.
Excellent. So I have excuse my ignorance, right? So I come from a software engineering background, me personally, right? So we do lots of events with Microsoft for software engineers, and we've had the conversation around starting to work at Microsoft during the pandemic, and the fact that a lot of folks are working remote and working from home. So I'm trying to get an idea if you're an engineer on the hardware side, how has that worked? So I see you've recently joined Microsoft as well, and you onboarded. Are folks working remote, to doing most of their job, or are there situations where folks have to go into a facility or a lab to get hands-on with certain hardware that they're working on?
Yeah, good question. So in my last, before I joined Microsoft, my entire career of 23 years, it has been an interactive mode of work with various team members. This job that I described involves a lot of problem solving. When I say problem solving, I mean, nothing goes according to the plan, like you all know. So we have to get into the room, draw it on the board, figure out the solutions. Everybody pitches in with various ideas, and then we come out with a proper solution and we go and implement that. And that is a normal mode of work. But when I moved into Microsoft, I started during the pandemic. So I never met my own team. I never met anybody else. However, I'm still leading a project here, and I'm executing on this, whatever the deliverable that I am supposed to deliver, I'm executing, and I need the team. And this team is spread across not only in Portland, where I am right now, but also in Raleigh. But given the infrastructure that we have that the company has provided, Microsoft has very good infrastructure, whether it's team sites or whether various other collaboration tools, we were able to carry this project execution without any problem so far. So we are as aggressive or as interactive with the team when it comes to problem solving. So I didn't find anything blocking us from doing all sorts of interactions and solving problems.
Excellent. So for the sake of time, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, but I want to thank you, Prashant, for sharing your experience and agreeing to be one of our panelists. So to our candidates, if you have questions specifically for Prashant, feel free to drop those questions in the chat. Okay, so with that, let me introduce our next speaker. So thank you. Okay, so our next speaker is Adger E. Harvin III, PhD, a senior program manager within SES, and also an HBCU graduate. So Adger, if you're ready.
I am, and hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Will. Hello, everyone. My name is Adger. It's pronounced Adger, almost like the cloud Azure, which you've heard they repeatedly said here. So when I first started with Microsoft, I kept hearing the word Azure. Azure will handle this. Azure will take care of that. And I got confused because I thought they were putting action items on me, and I just started the company. So that's just an inside joke. When I hear Azure used in the hallways, it always reminds me of my name. So I'm originally from Baltimore. I actually born and raised there. I ended up going to Morgan State University, which is a HBCU, as you all know, for my undergrad degree. I was actually in the original graduating engineering class out of Morgan State University. That tells you how many years back that's been. After that, I got an electrical engineering degree. I actually went out in the industry and got a job working for a defense contractor in the Washington, D.C. area. I did that for about 3 years, and then I realized I wanted to go to grad school. I wanted to focus on computer engineering background. So I then went to SUNY Binghamton. I achieved my master's and doctorate in computer engineering. And SUNY Binghamton, if you're not aware, Binghamton is 72 miles south of Syracuse. So it's in Western New York. When you see New York, a lot of people think New York City. This was where they had cows and horses and just, open land and cheese. It was just different. I loved it. It wasn't very diverse up there, but actually the school provided a very diverse background for me, from an HBCU school to a non-HBCU school, just from my storied career in education. I ended up here in Raleigh because there was a location here called Research Triangle Park, which had sort of one-stop shopping. Lots of companies were here in the field of engineering. And so if you come to Raleigh, there was more than one choice. So I moved down here and I worked for IBM. I got hired at IBM and I stayed at IBM for about 15 and a half years. I had numerous roles. I started as an engineer doing computer chip design and bus logic and things like that. I ended up becoming a program manager for a little while. I had an assignment as a technical advisor for a VP for a little while in management, and then several levels of management. So I ended up my career in upper management. And the reason I'm not with IBM was because IBM decided to get out of that sector of the business. And so with that happening, I actually took some personal time and just reflected on different things outside of the industry, real estate, finance, just various things along the way. Then, and even part of that was some consulting and even some recruiting for various technical companies. Then I received a phone call from an ex-colleague from my old company that I worked together with, and he let me know that there was Microsoft was building a team in Raleigh. Hadn't really kind of hit the news yet. It's kind of word of mouth from the circle of friends that you have as you network with others in this area. You kind of know people. And so I thought this is a great opportunity. Microsoft is a great company. They're leveraging and building a design team, which leverage some of the skills that I have and some of my old team has. And so I actually applied, interviewed, and was hired. And so I've been with Microsoft for 2.5 years. There were about 110 or so employees at the Microsoft location in Raleigh. It's only been six months old at the time when I joined. And so it's grown to 400 plus. And that's just a huge growth that's happened in the last 2.5 years. So I'm one that actually saw the building Raleigh before COVID hit and everyone sort of disappeared, scattered to their own houses. And we've hired so much since then, as you've heard on this call, in Portland and Raleigh and so forth since then. So we're all anxious, I think, when the buildings come up in Portland and also we get back to the building in Raleigh, we can all sort of see everyone together. And I truly enjoy working for Microsoft. I report in under Jean Bourferat's team, and it's under a parallel team it's a parallel team to Selim's under a different VP.
So quick question.
Yeah.
What is a day in the life like for you as a senior program manager within SES?
Oh, it's pretty chaotic. So I have several different roles. Majority of my role nowadays is actually on program management for one of our design activities. But prior to that, I actually was a PM for more business operations and growth of the local location, including some of the diversity and inclusion-based activity that's happening in our Microsoft hardware team. So a day in the life for me would be numerous meetings, as you can imagine, tracking design activities, interacting with some of the design engineers, all the nuances that go with issues, risks, challenges, schedule, what's not broken, capturing that in a format that can be used to see what we're on track for that. Interacting with the several levels of management and the inspirations focused on the skill of what we're developing. Are we meeting the goals of what we might sell as PM? It's very dynamic across the board. Our designs and activity is very dynamic, as you've heard. So it's a very set of work for me. One of the side activities that I do as a Microsoft employee, and it's a passion of mine, is focused on diversity and inclusion. So in our hardware organization, there's a task force of folks that actually, and I'm on the task force under Jean Bourferat's organization, to help focus on this activity, to ensure it's understood, it's being it's emanating down the chain for everyone else in the organization, and it's a good thing. Everyone is very open and willing, and it's part of our culture and culture shifting. You know, trying to transform our culture, and I decided to raise my hand and said, let me be one of those people to help transform the culture and ensure that we're making success in that area.
Excellent, excellent. So Adger, let me thank you for being one of our panelists. And if anyone has any questions for Adger, feel free to drop those questions in the chat, and then I'll ask you, Adger, to keep an eye on the chat if you can answer any of those questions.
Yep, will do. Thank you, Will.
Thank you. Yep. So with that, let me introduce our next panelist and speaker. And let me turn off the spotlight on Adger. So we're here till 7:30, so I want to encourage you guys, because I'm not sure how much time we're going to have left for Q&A, but I want to encourage you guys to utilize the chat if you have questions. And I'm going to encourage the Microsoft team members to keep an eye on the chat if there are any questions that you can answer, so that we can get the most out of our time this evening. So with that being said, let me go ahead and introduce our next speaker, who is Phil Atkinson, Principal SoC Verification Engineer within SES. So Phil, if you're ready.
Sure, thanks, Will. And if my internet's cutting out, let me know. So as Will said, I'm a principal SoC verification engineer. My team and our bigger team are responsible for essentially testing and making sure that the chips that we make are right before we go to manufacturing and after it comes back from manufacturing. And we call that verification and validation. A little bit about myself. So I spent most of my life in the Los Angeles area growing up. Went to UCLA, and at some point decided that I really don't like it being sunny every single day. So I decided to move to Wisconsin for 2 years to go to school there. And while it was very sunny there, it was also very cold, and that was different, and that was pretty cool. But ultimately, wanting to stay away from the sun was kind of key, so I moved to Portland. And it's a little known fact that it does get a little rainy and cloudy here occasionally, but our summers are absolutely gorgeous as it is right now. So I too came from Intel. I spent 23 years there and recently moved over to Microsoft. And one of my main motivations for coming over was first and foremost the people, and secondly the culture. This is a great company. Like this, from top to bottom, from Satya to all of our managers to our executives to the teams I interact with. I really love working here. And one of the things that's really that Jean talked about was that sense of collaboration. When you work with other teams, you are a partner, right? They want to help you. And that's not always been the case in my career. Sometimes you've had some, well, this is my stuff and I don't really want to work with you. Maybe you don't say that, but it kind of comes across that way. And I haven't experienced that at all at Microsoft. It's been really, really cool. A little bit more about what we do and what we're looking for. So for those of you who aren't familiar with verification, if you ever had or gone up to a refrigerator and they have an ice maker and there's like a button for ice and there's a button for water. If you've ever walked up to one of those refrigerators and you thought, I can get ice, I can get water. But what if I press both at the same time? What's going to happen, right? If you've ever thought that, then you probably have a career in verification or validation in your future. So that's essentially what we're doing is we're taking the models that Prashant's team has made and we're looking to find every last bug that we possibly can to ensure that when it goes to production, that when it comes back, it's actually going to work. And then the same thing on the post-silicon side, we are responsible for doing the majority of the testing to really find any last issues before final deployment so that it actually works and we have confidence in it. Yeah. So that's a little bit about us. What we're looking for is similar to what Prashant is looking for. We're looking for people who have a background in computer architecture. Ultimately, we have a language called UVM or System Verilog Test Bench that if you have any experience with, you'd be a great fit for us. Or if you've done any post-silicon testing or post-silicon validation, that would be something that would be applicable to what we do.
Excellent, excellent. And one quick question, what is it that you like most about working for Microsoft so far?
It's the people and the culture. I'll give you just like one little story. So I think it was my second or third day, I was watching the corporate videos that kind of gives you the ethics and, presents you with some scenarios on how Microsoft expects you to act. But the first thing about this is this video was more like a Netflix series. It had like characters and like drama and it was like acting and all this stuff. But one of the things that caught me is one of the characters was out riding his bike at 10 o'clock and he gets a call and he answers. He's like, hey, I'm out on my stress relief bike ride. This better be really good. And that really hit with me because I do that. Like just today at lunch, right? I took a half hour and went up the hill and went bike riding. And it's knowing that that's what Microsoft wants you to take care of yourself, take care of your people first, and make great products along with that as well.
Love it, love it. Thanks, Phil. So if anybody has any questions for Phil and his team and his role as a principal SoC verification engineer, please drop those questions in the chat. And Phil, I'll ask you to keep an eye on the chat if you can answer any of those questions. Okay, let me introduce our next panelist, and let me unhighlight Phil. And so our next speaker or panelist is Bita Rahani, who is a senior research manager within CAST. So Bita, if you're ready.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. Well, I'm really happy to be here today. As for my background, I was born and raised in Tehran, Iran. For those of you who are hearing the name of this country for the first time, it's a beautiful country in the Middle East. I did my undergrad in electrical engineering and specialized in information theory back in Iran, and then moved to United States for my graduate study in 2013. I got my master in computer engineering from Rice University, which is located in Houston, Texas. And then I moved to San Diego for my PhD and got my PhD there. Prior to joining Microsoft, I was fortunate enough to do 2 internships at Microsoft. I loved it so much that I technically never left after that. After my second internship, I was working as a contractor with my current team until I wrapped up my PhD. And then in 2018, I joined as a full-time employee. I worked as an IC during like the first year after joining Microsoft, and now I'm fortunate enough to lead a team of data scientists and researchers who are working on the next generation of AI. Happy to answer any question.
So your path to Microsoft was through the internship program, and have you worked on the same team the whole time, or have you moved around on different teams?
My first internship was in a different team, but my second internship was with the same group of team.
And then we've got a lot of folks that have, hardware engineering backgrounds, electrical engineering backgrounds, computer engineering, and even software engineering. But can you speak to a little bit about, for your particular team, the types of backgrounds you look for and skills and experience that you look for in your teams?
So what I really love about our team is that like we have a highly interdisciplinary team, like software engineers, hardware architect, and also like researchers and data scientists. So in order to innovate and write the history, you need to co-design like across the full stack. That includes like having like daily interaction with different people, understanding the bottlenecks and trade-offs. So that also like gives you an opportunity to learn and grow every day. Like I always learn something new, like about the hardware side, about like the software side, and also like the value I can add. For instance, like given my background in information theory and algorithms, like what I can bring to the table. So I really enjoy like that collaboration, and I think that's the future. Like we can't work on a specific field, like yeah.
Excellent. And then what is it that, for you personally, what is it that you like about working for Microsoft the most?
Well, when Doug gave me the offer, like I was even like telling him that like the opportunity, like the ambitions of the project is just like too good to pass on. And also like the talent density in the team, like the fact that you can learn on a daily basis, both like culturally and also like on the technical level, is not an opportunity you can get easily like anywhere else. So.
Excellent. So let me thank you for being one of our panelists. I know we're kind of running short on time, so that's why I'm encouraging all of our candidates to ask questions after each of our speakers. So if you have specific questions for Bita, feel free to ask those questions in the chat, and Bita, I'll ask you to keep an eye on the chat for any questions you can answer.
Will do.
So with that, let me introduce our next speaker, and let me unhighlight Bita. And our next speaker or panelist is Fanny Nina Paravicino, Senior Engineering Manager in CAST. So Fanny, if you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be part of the panelists. I will try to keep it short so we can have plenty of time for questions. A little bit about me. I'm from Cusco, Peru. Cusco, for probably many people haven't heard before, is where Machu Picchu it is. And Machu Picchu is one of the new 7 wonders of the world. So it's a very touristic area. I was born and raised there. I did my bachelor there. My bachelor was in CE, in computer engineering, CE. My whole career has been in CE. After my bachelor, actually, funny story, my first job, I was still an undergrad. I was almost 19 years old, 19 years old, and I got an opportunity to work with Microsoft Peru. Microsoft Peru was reaching out to Peru, Chile, and Colombia to do a version of Windows and Microsoft Office to the native language of the area. And one of the native language was Quechua. And Cusco was known as the capital of the Inca culture. So Quechua was it was known that it was supposed to be a common language, which is not true. But somehow I managed to get that opportunity. I worked with Microsoft Peru for a couple of years, almost until I finished my undergrad. And after finishing my undergrad, I moved to the capital of my country, worked for a good 4 years in the industry as a software engineer. My work was across different companies, mainly developing different software for the bank industry. Something that I realized in those 4 years is that I truly like the research area. I didn't quite like it to just use the tools. I really want to develop the next technology. And so from that goal that I have in mind, I got a scholarship to do a master in the UPR, which is University of Puerto Rico, to do a master in computer engineering. So I was part of the ECE program. My master was specifically on image processing. So I was part of a research center that was heavily on digital signal processing, a little orthogonal to computer science, but it gave me another view of the whole spectrum on ECE. From that master, I got an invite to go to present my work during my master time across different schools. One of them was Northeastern, and I happened to meet my PhD advisor at Northeastern, Dr. David Kelly, and they invited me to go through a PhD program. So I applied different schools. I was lucky to get accepted, but I already was hooked with David Kelly to go to the PhD program at Northeastern. So I joined Northeastern University Computer Research Group, what is called Computer Architecture Research Group, which is nuclear group under David Kelly guidance. My whole research during my PhD was heavily on optimizations, how we can do high performance optimizations from different workloads across different accelerators. I target specifically complex problems like irregular workloads that are dynamically changing. So the workloads that are not statically behaving, and it's more dynamic behavior based on recursion, based on data paths, so that it involve speculation and all of that. So it was a very challenging problem, and how accelerators can actually do high performance of that execution. So I proposed different solutions to it. From that work, I happened to have 2 internships across different companies. One was in the East Coast. My college is in Massachusetts. So I did one in Massachusetts with Analogic. Analogic was a company that was doing a lot of research in terms of image processing in accelerators. My second internship was almost at the end of my PhD. I did at Apple. I came to the Bay Area. I liked the Bay Area. Apple was doing a lot of work into the GPUs, how to do image processing at high scale on the GPUs on the iOS devices. I did a lot of work on that. I liked it a lot, the internship that I stayed almost a year with them. I got a full-time offer from them, but at the same time, when I finished my PhD, I got the opportunity to explore other companies, and one of them were Intel. And Intel offered me a research scientist position after the PhD. So again, in the Bay Area. So I took it. I came to the Bay Area for good. I moved from the East Coast for good in 2017. I joined Intel as a research scientist. My role at Intel, and many folks having an Intel, my role was a little different. I was not necessarily on the hardware and silicon part of the company. I was more on the research part, where we actually developed different intellectual property solutions. My role was to do papers or patents with different ideas in the computer vision realm that can improve the different products of the team. With that, I did a few publications on very, very well-known conference, CPR, NeurIPS, but mainly my role was doing different patents. There was a particularly challenge in my team that we want to submit different patents. So in the peak of that was 10 patents in a year. That doesn't mean that all of them will be approved. I think we have 50% of approval rate. Still really good. It was very good experience. I stayed with Intel a couple of years, and the reason why I switched is because Microsoft actually approached me when I started my tenure at Intel, and it was a team and MSR, Microsoft Research, genomics team. They were looking for researchers to do high performance execution for heavy workloads. At that point in time, I was already, I was just at the beginning of my tenure at Intel, so I want to continue exploring the Intel experience. So I put a hold, pulled the brakes there. But after 2 years, I realized that I would like to have a much holistic experience in a company that has hardware and software arm of development to do a holistic solution. And so I revisit that invite that I got. And of course, by that point, the position was already completely filled. But the hiring manager put me in contact with CAS team. I was through Lisa. Lisa Woods put me in contact with Eric, and Eric is reporting to Doug Berger. And so they taught me a lot about CAS and what we do in CAS. It was fascinating. I liked the whole experience. They sold really good the role. To be honest, of course, when I did this search, I applied to different companies, and many companies are doing cool stuff. I applied, I have offers from Amazon, Google, all of them are trying to solve the issue of how we do AI at a large scale. But Microsoft has something that I couldn't find in other companies, which was culture and people. And that makes the whole experience completely different to me. So I joined Microsoft a couple of years ago. I have been in Microsoft for 2 years. I joined as an IC. I was a senior engineer in the team. And after a few months, given my tenure that I was driving some, I have some reports, interns or so. So I started growing a little bit my team. So now I'm a manager. I've been as a manager a little more than a year. I have a team that is growing. I'm still hiring managers. I have a few positions open. What my team does is I'm part of the software stack. And in the software stack, my team work heavily in optimizations. I mentioned a little bit about computer architecture and my research about optimization. So that's still what my team does. We do a lot of optimizations to how we can improve the execution of AI at large scale. So I work heavily on distributed execution, the different methods and techniques that we can apply to accelerate the distributed execution. So there's a lot of things in that realm, very new, very groundbreaking, a lot of cool stuff to do there. So if you are in that realm, please reach out. I'm happy to talk to you. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Excellent. So Bonnie, thank you for being one of our panelists as well. And to all our candidates, like she said, if you have any questions, please drop those questions in the chat. But we've got a few minutes left, and what I want to do is ask all of the Microsoft team members, if you don't have your video on, feel free to turn on your video, and let's use the time that we have left to ask some panel questions. I see that we still have Zahn with us as well. So to our candidates, if you have any high-level questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask some questions that I already have prepared, and I'm going to ask the Microsoft folks, considering the little bit of time that we have left, if we make this sort of a rapid-fire Q&A panel session, and I'll try to squeeze in a couple of questions from the chat. So for our candidates, if you got questions that you want me to ask the team, drop them in the chat. And with that being said, let me turn off the spotlight on Fani so that we can see everyone on the Microsoft team. All right, so I've got some questions, like I said, prepared that I'm going to try to get everyone involved. We'll make these kind of rapid fire, considering we've only got a few minutes left. So my first question is for Selim and Prashant. So what is different about working for Microsoft as compared to your roles at previous companies? What differentiates Microsoft in your experience thus far?
Yes.
And that's for Selim and Prashant.
Okay. Again, the values, the Microsoft values, is much more stronger than what I'm used to in other places. The investing in people and having results follow is my motto, which is aligned with Microsoft's, which was not quite aligned with other places that I've been accustomed to. The only other thing that I would add is the people and the welcoming nature, because maybe I'm a little biased over here. I joined during the pandemic, and there were a lot of folks who held my hand and helped me go through the ramp process at Microsoft, because it's a rather large company, and it's working from home, trying to ramp into it is not quite easy, and the helpful nature of individuals has been quite differentiating.
Excellent. Prashant, did you want to add anything?
Yes, I think beyond what Selim said, I think one of the key things that I was really attracted to is the opportunity that Microsoft provides to optimize and fine-tune the designs that we need to deliver, specifically that puts Microsoft at advantage, right? That's the opportunity, that's what we call vertical integration opportunity that we have. So we can worry about one and only one customer, and then we kind of produce the best part for it. So that's a very something different that I didn't get an opportunity, because when we work at a previous company where we have to build a general purpose CPU that fits for everybody, and in the process we may not be able to optimize everything for all customers. So this is an opportunity that we have that we can probably fine tune for our own needs.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so my next question is for Doug. And Doug, I noticed that you've worked for different parts or different teams within Microsoft. So what is different about working for Azure Hardware Systems and Infrastructure that's different from other parts of Microsoft that you may have worked for?
Thanks for the question. I would say two things. Number one is, we talk about Azure as the goal of having it be the world's computer. I mean, we're building a planetary computer, and so we have scale like you wouldn't believe, and you can ship stuff that hits millions of servers. I mean, we're building massive data centers all over the planet and connecting them together. And so I think number one is scale, and when you work at that scale, you just learn things that you don't learn otherwise. Because every time you add a zero to the number of things you ship, new things happen, and not always for the better. And so really operating at that scale is something very, very few people have an opportunity to do. I think that's the biggest difference.
Excellent. Thanks, Doug. Okay, so let me ask the next question to Jean and Adger for a couple of different perspectives. So Jean, what advice can you offer candidates interviewing with Microsoft to maximize their chances of landing an opportunity with one of your teams?
Thank you for the question, Will. I mean, obviously, be yourself. Know what you want. Have an open mind. Think big. Everybody brings in their unique skills and capabilities. Don't sell yourself short. No matter how good you are or what a great experience you've had, you're going to have the opportunity to learn and improve, your career, your profession, yourself at Microsoft. And just think in those terms, and be a team player. I mean, Microsoft loves people that work as teams and succeed, by working with others. So bring in examples of successes you made an impact on. You make an impact on people, and be part of a team that made an impact. And those are what we look for.
Excellent. And from another perspective, Adger, any advice you can offer candidates, and to Jean's point, can you be yourself, culturally speaking, as an employee of Microsoft?
Sure, absolutely you can. I would just kind of toss out 4 things I think that candidates should be aware of. One is you should be prepared, right? Bring your out of the box thinking. I mean, solutioning. You want to be able to think outside the box. A lot of it happens during the interview process. We want to know that you have the ability to think, right? Another thing is the growth mindset, right? Be able to convey and share that areas where you've faltered in the past, but yet you've realized what the problem was, and you learn from that. So like being able to understand that everyone makes mistakes, but we want to see that and understand that you've learned from that. A third one would be think about how you influence others. Like in the work you've done so far, have you influenced the process, efficiencies, things like that. So just give that some thought as you kind of prepare for interview process. And yes, Microsoft, you can be yourself. So have your natural self show up for the interview in a professional way, right? Absolutely, it's a very diverse culture, very diverse environment, and as Selim mentioned very early in this, we're building a very diverse team. So we're looking for different perspectives in all aspects.
Excellent. So quick question for Bita and Phil. And I'm choosing Bita and Phil for this question because Bita has been with Microsoft for quite some time, and Phil more recently joined. But putting your shoes on as a candidate, what are some of the non-advertised benefits of working at Microsoft, or things that maybe you joined the team or you joined Microsoft and you realize there's some great reason to be there that you did not know before? Or in Bita's case, maybe there's something that kept you at Microsoft, for the amount of time that you've been there.
If you don't mind, Phil, I can go first. So besides like the great technical work that you get to do, I would say the culture of the people, and the people are great advantage, and it's not necessarily advertised. Like every day, like you get to work with super talented people, and you get the sense that like all of them like just checked out the ego at the door. Like there's no sense of ego, there's no sense of like hierarchy or anything. You get to say, like when you have an opinion, you can like discuss it and like bring that up. And also like if you also feel the freedom to, if you have like a maybe crazy or risky idea, like you can like bring that up, get feedback and so on. So I would say like people and culture are something that's not necessarily advertised, but like is a great thing to have, and you need that in order to grow like in your technical position as well.
Excellent. And Phil, would you have anything to add?
Oh yeah, I got a rapid fire list here. All right, first off, Xbox Ultimate Game Pass. So we get a free subscription. My son uses it. You only get one. I don't get to use it, but my son does. Amazing health benefits. The Microsoft Store, you get big discounts on Microsoft software and even a little bit on Xbox products. Learning. Microsoft is huge on growth mindset and learning. We have lots of opportunities to learn. There was a huge AI and machine learning conference a couple of weeks ago that was just amazing. From people like me who are just learning about it to researchers who've been doing it for many years, a great opportunity to learn. And then lastly, employee resource groups. There are huge groups of people who have common backgrounds and common focuses, like Blacks at Microsoft, who will educate and will enlightened others. And this has been something that's been really great for me, is every month I'm learning something new, right? And it's just been so wonderful to learn about different people and different ways of being.
Love it. And so let me get Fani in for the last question, because I know some candidates are probably wondering, what is it like to be a part of a team that is distributed geographically? So not everybody is in the same location. What is that like to be a part of a team distributed geographically, Fani?
Yeah, that's a really good question for me because I'm located in the Bay Area and the majority of CAS is actually located in Redmond. My team actually that reports to me is here. We have other members. During the pandemic, we actually grew. So we have we have a critical mass now in the Bay Area. So we are around 30 people each in the Bay Area for the whole CAS. And we actually expanded further. We have now Raleigh, we have one member of Raleigh, and we are going to grow the team there. Redmond is still, a much bigger portion of the team. Honestly, with working from home, there is no barrier. It's just plain field for everyone. We use Teams a lot for communication, and it works perfectly fine. You can use for calls, for IMs, to share different files. Of course, email is another source of communication. It just works great. And I'm talking that some people that work with me and even in different time zones, right? They are in the East Coast. And then we accommodate to it, right? It's all about the dynamic of the team and the accommodation. We have specific weekly meetings that will accommodate different time zones that everyone should show up, that allow us to this cross communication. But it's always about the dynamic, how we interact across different teams, and every person is different, but it's the synergy. I think it's the culture that allows to make that happen. So I honestly don't feel the difference. Pre-COVID, I think that the only difference is that some trips will have to happen. So I used to travel to Redmond every 2 months or so to have, yes, a process, go for a week or a few days to have different meetings and sync up. But now that we are growing across different locations, I see those trips less and less. And with the proof that we have done through COVID that it's not necessarily essential, it's a need that we can actually do it virtually. I don't think that's even necessary anymore. So it's great. I will say it's great. I don't feel the difference at all.
Excellent. So I know we pretty much ran out of time, but I wanted to, before we go, I wanted to talk about next steps for our candidates. And first of all, thank you, Fani, for that great answer. And thanks to all of our panelists for your answer. So I want to do two more things before we go. I want to talk about next steps quickly, and then I want to give final words to our keynote, John Bafarhat, to basically give any words of encouragement for the candidates. But next steps for the candidates, I should have your resume already, either through one of my sourcing team members that reached out to you. But if you want to give me an updated resume, just email me back to one of the emails where we sent the invites, or go to our website at hbcuconnect.com/Microsoft/Azure-Hardware. And make sure we have your latest resume. We will share that resume with the recruiting team there at Microsoft, led by Jesse and his team and the different hiring organizations. They will definitely review your resume. So you want to get that to me tonight, if possible, so I can share that with the team by tomorrow morning. They'll do a resume review. And if you are fit for immediate opportunities, they will reach out for a phone screen or a possible technical interview process that they will let you know about. So keep an eye on your email for that once we have your resume, and then Jesse and team will follow up. So Jesse, did you have anything to add as far as next steps?
No, that's perfect. Appreciate it, Will.
Okay, so everybody email me back with your latest resume or drop it off on our website. And then let me give the final words to John, who's still here with us. Thank you, John. And if you'd like to give any words of encouragement for our candidates.
Thank you, Will, and thank you for setting this up. And thank you for all the panelists for joining and for those that submitted questions. And as you can see, we have a phenomenal team. And what you see here is just a small subset of the people we have at Microsoft. And you can tell from the energy and the participation and how we've come together. This is the first time as a group we're talking about this topic. So it's just to see the chemistry and the energy that is built into our culture. It's a great Microsoft. If you're going to work for a large company, I can't think of a better company to work for. Many of us have made moves, and as you heard from Selim and Prashant, they made move from long-standing, commitment to companies before, and that's because we all see the future is in big companies, and Microsoft of all those is the best culture to join. Please consider us. We have positions in many locations. In the Silicon, we've doubled our team for the last 3 years in a row. So we'll continue to grow, and the opportunities will continue to come. Join us on our journey, and join our community. And thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, and thank you for all of your participation. And to our candidates, thank you for joining us, because without you coming to these events, we cannot host these events and get people hired for Microsoft. So you guys make this possible for us. So I'm grateful for you taking the time out to learn more about Microsoft and this particular team that's hiring. So thank you. I dropped the link in the chat for where you can go to make sure we have your latest resume. I'm going to be reviewing those this evening and then sharing them with Jesse and the team tomorrow morning. And they'll be taking a look and arranging for some interviews. So hopefully you all got a lot out of this meeting. Thanks again to the Microsoft team for taking the time out. And we look forward to some good news for your team growing from this particular community. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you all. And good luck to you all. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.